Welcome to Chrono Verse. What if one moment could erase your entire past? In this story, someone traveled through time. But what followed them back wasn't human. Keep watching, because the truth might already be inside your memories.
They found him on the edge of the old city, silent, barefoot, and staring at the cathedral clock that hadn't worked in decades. He spoke no name. He had no ID, but his eyes looked like they had seen the end of time. No one knew where he came from. His clothes were stitched in a strange pattern, made of fibers that shimmered under streetlight. His skin carried scars shaped like circuitry, and beneath his left wrist was something embedded, something metallic, pulsing, faintly like a dying star. He said he was from the year 2089, but not the 2089 anyone here was heading toward. He came from a year that no longer existed. A fracture, he said. A deleted future. One that time itself is trying to erase. The locals thought he was insane, until he started describing things that hadn't happened yet, but would. Exact, precise, terrifying. He knew of storms that hadn't yet formed, names of children not yet born, the fall of a building that still stood strong down to the minute it would collapse. But he spoke with no pride, only guilt, as if he'd watched it all fall apart, and maybe helped it happen. He stayed in an abandoned tram station beneath the city, a place that echoed with distant hums only he could hear. He spoke rarely, but when he did, it was like listening to someone whose voice had traveled through broken glass, distorted, weighted by something no one else could understand. He warned them. You remember what came before. I remember what came after. They started asking him questions about the future, about technology, about the world ahead. He only gave riddles, warnings. When memory fails, the machine will choose. When love dies, history will reset. No one understood what it meant, but they wrote it down. People started recording him, posting clips, calling him a prophet, a fraud, a ghost. But something strange began to happen. Everyone who listened to him, really listened, started dreaming the same dream. A city drowning in golden light, a black tower pulsing like a heartbeat, and a voice whispering, "You are too early, or far too late." Then one morning he was gone, but beneath the place he slept, scratched into the concrete floor, were 5 numbers, burned into the stone like Fire 3114 08 22 one knows what it means. A date? A time? A countdown? All they knew was that everything felt different after that, as if the world had shifted a few inches to the left, as if history had blinked, and somewhere far beyond the clouds, something had just turned its head. The numbers left behind, 3114 08 2201, spread faster than any official news ever could. Conspiracy forums lit up. Underground podcasts dissected them. Some said it was a time code. Others believed it was a warning. A few called it a signal from the erased timeline. But no one could explain why people across the world began dreaming. The same sequence, not just in one city, not just in Europe, all over. In Tokyo, a child whispered the numbers in his sleep. In Buenos Aires, a woman sketched the same clock face again and again with blood-red hands, pointing at 3:14. In Johannesburg, a power grid failed for exactly 8 minutes and 22 seconds, starting at 1:01 a.m. What connected them? No one knew. But something was waking up. A journalist, working for an independent digital archive, began retracing the places where the Time Walker had been seen. She found whispers of him in broken elevators, in train tunnels lined with ivy, in static-ridden CCTV clips that played footage in reverse. Each location seemed to echo with residual heat, as if time had flexed there. In one location, beneath the city library, she found a room that didn't exist on any blueprint. Inside were 17 burned-out screens, all showing frozen frames, each an image of a city that looked wrong. Buildings curved the wrong way, skies tinted violet, people staring upward as if waiting for something that never came. One screen still worked. It displayed a looping video, a silhouette standing on a rooftop, wind howling. In the distance, a black structure, too smooth, too still. The screen glitched every time the figure turned its head. There was no audio, except for the timestamp burned into the corner. 3114 08 22 on, the same numbers. The journalist took the footage and uploaded it anonymously. Within 24 hours, it had over 10 million views. People began calling the figure the Last Witness. Urban myths spread. If you paused the video at the right second, you could see a face, your own, aged and terrified. More frightening than the video itself were the comments. People weren't reacting in fear. They were reacting in recognition. I've seen that tower before, in my dreams. That sky, I remember it. But how? This is the place I go when I sleep. Then, something changed. The cathedral clock, silent for over 60 years, began ticking. Just once. One tick. At exactly 3:14 a.m., every dog in the city barked in unison. Several streetlights flickered out. And on one wall near the tram station, a new set of numbers appeared. Fresh, wet, as if written in ink that wasn't ink at all. 72 a countdown. Someone, or something, was keeping time. The journalist knew one thing. This wasn't just a mystery. This was a memory bleeding through the fabric of now, and whatever was coming had already happened. Somewhere. The countdown had begun. 72. No one knew what it was counting down to, but its presence alone caused a strange tension to ripple through the city. People began to feel off. Not sick, not paranoid, just disconnected. Like they had been misplaced in time. Conversations repeated. Familiar songs played on the radio before they were released. People swore they'd seen a headline before it was written. Entire blocks of the city felt colder, older. The journalist, who found the video, she stopped sleeping. I close my eyes, she said, and wake up in a city with 2 moons. Then came the phenomenon, the glitchers. Ordinary people, doctors, bus drivers, school kids, suddenly stopped mid-sentence, stared into nothing and said things like, "The tower has eyes. Don't trust the mirrors." They already know we're watching. A moment later, they'd blink, apologize, and remember nothing. Surveillance cameras caught a man walking backward through a crowded plaza. His face was blurred, not by the camera, but in real life, like his identity had been smeared by a digital brush. That same day, across the ocean, a woman surfaced from a coma she had been in for 19 years. Her first words, "Is it 3114 yet? I need to warn them." She died 2 hours later. No cause, no explanation, just gone. Theories exploded online. Reddit threads swarmed. Scientists, fiction writers, and late-night streamers all offered ideas. He wasn't from the future. He was from a collapsed future. Maybe time is like a hard drive, and someone's deleting old files to make space. What if we're inside a correction, a patch to history? But the most terrifying theory? What if he didn't just come back alone? A group of amateur coders analyzed the countdown numbers and found a pattern, one that didn't fit human logic, but rather quantum sequencing. The math suggested something was coexisting alongside our current reality, like a twin shadow. They called it the echo layer, a place where failed timelines go, where broken futures loop endlessly in search of stability, and somehow our world was now touching it. Around the globe, more people reported seeing the tower, not physically, but in dreams, in flashes on phone screens, reflections in bus windows, a black monolith, featureless, silent. But the terrifying part? It was closer every time. In one image, it was on the horizon. In another, It was standing in a forest that didn't exist on any map. The photos never stayed up for long. They glitched, vanished, or turned to static. Still, one audio recording surfaced, from a teenager who saw it in a lucid dream, her voice trembling. It's not just a tower, it's watching, and it's listening for the one who escaped. She screamed before the recording cut off. Meanwhile, the original numbers, 31, 1408, and 2201, had begun showing up in random places, inside barcode scanners, on receipts, in serial numbers, and always followed by one word: rewind. Something was coming, something that shouldn't be able to come back, and deep in a hidden bunker, long abandoned, a monitor lit up by itself. On it, a single message, typed slowly across the screen. The timeline has been breached. Initiate Protocol 0, locate the anomaly. They called it Protocol 0, a failsafe created decades ago by a now-erased think tank buried beneath layers of classified architecture, a system designed not to prevent a breach in time, but to respond to one once it occurred. But here's the catch. No one alive remembered activating it, yet it was running. Across 6 dormant data hubs in different countries, red lights blinked in unison. Air filtration systems kicked in after years of silence. Somewhere in Geneva, a rusted speaker crackled with static before spitting out a single phrase: "The anomaly has returned. Phase realignment required." And just like that, the hunt began. The term anomaly wasn't new to the fringe circles. It had been whispered on radio waves, buried in broken code, and even recorded in a few declassified audio logs by Cold War-era researchers. But now, governments, independent hackers, and rogue AI clusters were all trying to answer the same question. Who or what was the anomaly? Most believed it was the traveler, the man who emerged in the city square, but the deeper they looked, the less certain they became. In one of the Protocol 0 facilities, a recovered hard drive contained scrambled footage. A blurry figure moving through an abandoned hospital hallway, only visible for a few frames at a time. He didn't walk. He flickered, like a corrupted memory being forcefully inserted into reality. Behind him, the walls warped. Lights dimmed. The clock on the wall spun forward and backward simultaneously. One analyst watched the footage in reverse and saw a terrifying detail. The figure wasn't entering the building. He was leaving it. But from the inside of the wall, people across the world began experiencing strange phenomena, personal items from their childhood suddenly missing, not stolen, erased. Entire diary entries faded from old journals. A woman in Berlin opened her grandmother's photo album and found every face smudged, except one. A man standing in the distance of every photo, always in the same black coat. Even stranger? No two people saw the same face. Time wasn't just unraveling, it was reformatting. Reality became a patchwork. Glitches appeared in nature, trees blooming. In winter, rivers flowing backward for minutes at a time. Someone uploaded a video of a sunset that played twice, without the sun ever rising again. The world had started repeating itself, subtly, almost as if it was testing which version to keep. Then came the whispers. Not voices exactly, but thoughts that didn't feel like yours. Not inside your head, but behind your eyes. People reported feeling watched by their own reflections. Some said mirrors no longer matched their movements in perfect sync. One survivor posted a chilling video on a private forum. He held up a clock. Behind him, his reflection held up a different time. Then, his reflection smiled. Back at the journalist's side, she received a package. No return address, no stamp. Just coordinates written in faded black ink, along with a familiar phrase. You've already been there. You just don't remember yet. She followed the coordinates to a mountainside tunnel long abandoned since the Cold War. Inside, she found walls covered in carvings. not in any language known to man, but mathematical sequences. They pulsed, and at the center of the tunnel, hanging in the air like a suspended breath, floated a broken watch. Its hands ticking, once forward, once backward, and then stopping. Exactly at 31:14:08:22:01, a door opened behind her, but it wasn't a physical door, it was a moment, tearing itself open. And through it, she saw something impossible, a city made of glass, hovering above a chasm of stars, an army of silhouettes watching her, and him, the anomaly, only this time, he was smiling. She didn't remember walking through the door. One second she was staring into the fracture in time, and the next, she was standing inside it. The city wasn't made of glass after all. It was made of memories. Each building shimmered and changed form, flashing between ancient temples, futuristic, skyscrapers, war bunkers, and suburban homes. Streets reassembled themselves under her feet. There were no shadows cast by the sun, because there was no sun. Instead, time itself was the source of light, pouring from fractures in the sky like golden threads stitching together a world that shouldn't exist. Then she heard it, not a voice, not quite, more like a thought, pressed directly into her mind. You brought it with you, and now it remembers you. She turned. It wasn't him, not the traveler. This was something else, a shadow, not cast by light, but by memory. It stood like a man, moved like smoke, and spoke like a broken music box. It showed her flashes, moments she had never lived, but somehow recognized. She saw herself as a child, talking to someone who wasn't there. She saw her father's watch, stopped at a time that hadn't happened yet. She saw the traveler, but this time he wasn't running. He was hiding something, and the shadow whispered again, "Time forgets only when you do." Back in the real world, or what was left of it, Protocol Zero reached a new threshold. The system had located the traveler's original entry point, but there was a problem. There were 5 identical entry points. In 5 different years, on 5 different continents, and in each he appeared 7 seconds too late, every single time. That's when a new theory emerged. He wasn't trying to fix the timeline. He was trying to delay something, buy time, not for himself, but for something else to arrive. And now that something had started speaking back. The journalist moved through the memory city, guided by instinct, or perhaps something more. Her hand brushed the side of a metallic monument, and suddenly she collapsed under a wave of disjointed voices. He never came back. Don't believe the mirror. You are the echo, not the source. The future remembers things you haven't done yet, she screamed, but no sound came out. Then she was inside a room. It looked familiar, too familiar. A replica of her old childhood bedroom, down to the scratches on the desk. Only one thing was different. There was another version of herself sitting on the bed. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Took you long enough. I've been leaving clues." Suddenly, she remembered. The blank diary, the vanishing objects, the echoes in the mirror. She wasn't losing her mind. She was leaving herself breadcrumbs, across timelines, across realities, because there was one truth the anomaly couldn't erase. A memory hidden inside a memory becomes a weapon, and just like that, it clicked. The traveler wasn't running from something. He was preparing the world for her. She was the anomaly. Or at least, she had been, until something else slipped through. Something far older. Something that had been waiting for her to open the door. Back in the city, the glass structures shattered. One by one, not destroyed, rewritten. The skyline twisted into symbols, the symbols twisted into code, and the code started saying one word, over and over again, run. She was falling, not through space, but through time itself. The air folded around her, light split like water. Her skin flickered between ages, child, adult, stranger, shadow. Everything she'd once known unraveled like film from an old projector. And then silence. She landed on something solid, a floor maybe. Stone, metal, time. She stood up and looked around. This wasn't the Memory City anymore. This was something older, more ancient than memory. The walls were made of time-coded architecture, each stone pulsing with fragmented visions. Not the past, not the future, but every version of now that could have existed. On the far side of the chamber stood a tall, circular mirror, black and endless. In its reflection, she saw herself, but it wasn't her. It was the version that never left, the one who chose to stay behind and keep the fracture open, the one who had started this loop, the one who had forgotten she was real. From the shadows, the traveler stepped forward, tired, broken, but alive. "You weren't supposed to follow me," he said quietly. She stared at him. "Then why leave the clues?" He smiled, almost sadly. "Because I hoped you'd be the one who remembered." Then the world cracked, a thunderclap, without sound. The mirror began to pulse. A ripple passed through time, folding every version of her life into a single moment. A split-second flash of all the choices she never made. She was back in her apartment, then at the train station, then in the alley, then in the corridor of light, and through it all, one thing became horrifyingly clear. She had never time-traveled. She had always been inside time's illusion, a loop, a trap, a message. The traveler placed a small object in her hand, a watch. Not just any watch, her father's, still ticking. But now, the hands were moving in reverse. "Break it," he said. She hesitated. "What happens if I do?" He looked into the mirror. "If you don't, it gets out." And then she saw it. In the reflection. Not her, not the traveler, but something behind them. Huge, distorted. Watching. Not a creature. Not a machine. A consciousness. One that had been waiting for her to realize the truth. That her timeline had already ended. Everything after was a copy. A looping message sent through reality to warn someone, and she was the one who heard it first. She raised the watch. Her hand trembled. The mirror cracked, just slightly. The traveler didn't move. He closed his eyes and said, "Do it." She smashed. The watch. The mirror exploded into blinding light, spiraling out like gravity torn in reverse, and for a second, everything paused. Not stopped, paused, as if reality itself was asking, "Do you want to try again?" She opened her eyes, a city skyline, birds flying, noise, life, normal. She was back, or maybe forward. She didn't know anymore. All she knew was, no one remembered the storm but her. She reached into her pocket. The watch was gone, but in its place was a small folded note. In her own handwriting, "Don't follow him next time. The story isn't over. Time remembers everyone eventually, and sometimes it sends one back."